And with that, I will welcome everyone to our workshop here today at San Diego Miramar College in conjunction with SDSU, and with our wonderful guest speaker that we have from, well, she actually works with Hyatt Hotels, but she's also a mentor and an advisor for the Rec Innovation Lab, and has years and years of experience in the topic that we're covering today, which is HR management for entrepreneurs. And there's so many things that we could cover within this topic. We could probably do 10 workshops that I can think of, but this is the first workshop we're doing here together. And I will now pass it over to Angela to introduce herself. Oh, but actually before I do that, Angela, Adriana will be sharing with you also, all of you, a survey. So if you get that in the chat, it'll be coming in a little bit, and make sure to please respond to that. Now I'll pass it over to Angela. Angela, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And to big thank you to you, Tanya, and the Rec Innovation Lab for inviting me. My specialty is in human resources, and so what I wanted to share with all of you is really how the HR function is really just basic leadership principles. And so we'll dive in. I'm going to share my screen because I do have a presentation.
Wonderful.
Okay, Tanya, can you give me a thumbs up? Are we good to go? We're rolling?
Yeah, I say thumbs up instead of doing it. Yes. Yeah, it looks great, Angela. It's great.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll use the chat feature, and we're also going to use some reactions from everyone. So who here has heard of human resources referred to as the principal's office?
You want us to give a thumbs up if we've heard that?
Give a thumbs up. You can say yes. Or what about the compliance officer? Or it's all policies and procedures. These are all certain misconceptions really of what the HR function really is. What I want to submit to you today, or at least give you an indication of, I just want to change your mindset if that's where you're coming from. So my next question is, who here wants to attract the best talent that's going to propel their business forward? Give me a thumbs up if that's you. Okay, good, good. Who here wants to create great brands to run their successful organization? If that's you, I'd love to see a wave or a thumbs up. Good. What we're going to discuss today is really that people first policies and procedures are what is really going to be the foundation of your business and really set you apart. I've been doing this for 16 years, so I've had the opportunity to work across multiple brands, multiple teams. And I will share with you that when you put your people first and you share good practices, that's really where the rubber meets the road in terms of how your business is built and how you get those good business outcomes that every business owner wants. A good customer base, loyal customer base, increased revenue, increased profits, all of those things. So whether you're in the beginning stages of launching your business, or maybe you're looking at adding your first team member to your business, what we're going to talk today about, what the conversation will be about today, is definitely for you. So should we get started?
Yes.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
So this is my people first formula. Your HR function is really about how you think of the people, and it's really about your business strategy. So really, let's face it, the people that you decide to bring into your organization, and then in turn, the leadership that you develop to retain them, really makes or breaks your business. Human resources is really the practice of ensuring your people are doing the work that you need them to do, and they are serving your customers in the work that you need them to do. So the name itself implies human, and it's all about the people. It's all about developing them. And then the practices are really, it's just the execution of the ideas, theories, and in California, especially the laws that are going to keep your business moving forward. So my people first formula is all about developing a people first mindset, developing practices that put your people first, and that is going to give you those positive business outcomes that we're looking for. The world has changed tremendously in the last 6, 7, 8 months. I don't even know, what month are we in with COVID? But even before that, the world was changing, and how people look at work and the work environment has changed significantly in the last decade. I also think as an HR professional that when we are in COVID, how we've looked at work and the work environment is changing. And so I really think there's going to be some long lasting shifts that we as employers and business owners, we have to keep that in mind as we're looking forward. And so really having those forward thinking people processes is really going to set your business apart. So we're going to take a look at, we're going to come back to this people first formula. So again, it's a people focused mindset. It's always making sure that your practices are organized around your people, and those two things together equal some great business outcomes. So this is how we're going to get there. This is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you some of my favorite leadership principles. We're going to talk about the recruiting practices and retention practices that keep your people first. And then we'll end with some Q&As. Sound good? Okay. So what I'd like to do right now is, and Adriana, I'd love for you to help me here because I'm going to ask some people to put some things in the chat box. So I'd like you to think about the people that you have worked with or you have worked for. You've probably worked for some really good leaders and maybe not so great leaders. So what I'd like you to first think about the leaders that you worked for that emulate great leaders. What are the qualities and characteristics that you can remember about them? What made them a good leader for you? So if you can think of those qualities or characteristics, I'd love for you to share them in the chat and kind of look at what we have.
Charlize said open communicator. Jasmine said initiative.
Kind of, we'll give some people.
Jenny said did not micromanage. Carmen said very motivated. Approachable, adaptable, open to change, forward thinking, encouragers, flexible, leading by example, strong interpersonal skills, honest, authentic, flexible and progressive, and lead by example.
Those are great. Those are really great. And I agree, all of those are great qualities. So now I want you to just shift your focus, and maybe you've had an experience with a not so great leader. What are some of those qualities and characteristics that you experienced working for them? You can put them in the chat and we'll take a look at them.
Rude, closed-minded, micromanage, the exact opposite, degrading, microaggressive, disorganized, not collaborative, inability to delegate.
Oh, that's a good one.
Those who boss you around versus lead you. Not following through, avoids handing personal problems in the team, bad time management.
Okay, so those are good, and they kind of, that's the whole spectrum, right? The good leaders have honest communication, they're leading versus micromanaging. So who you work for matters. So you're the leader of your organization, you're the leader of the business. How you decide to play that role, it matters to your organization. It matters to the people who work for you. And so the very principle or foundation of a good human resource or people practices are going to begin with the leadership that you develop in yourself. 57% of Americans leave their jobs because of their boss. 57%. So if your organization right now is 5, based on the statistics, more than half could possibly leave based on your leadership. So again, the foundation is very simple. It starts with good leadership. I have a quote from one of my favorite leadership books of all time. And the quote is, "There are no bad teams, only bad leaders." And this is from Jocko Willink from his book, Extreme Ownership, which brings me to I want to share as we get started, I said that the basic HR function begins with good leadership principles. These are three of my favorite leadership principles that I have come to own. And the first one is extreme ownership, and it's taken from the title of Jocko Willink's book. And it really is just the practice of taking ownership from all outcomes. You're the leader of the business. You own every aspect of your business. You own who you hire, who you retain, all of your business outcomes. You don't place blame. You have the power to change what you need to change, and you must take that action, and you must take that seriously. The second leadership principle is follow up and follow through. This is finishing strong. It's the practice of always finishing strong. Do what you say you're going to do. Follow up with your customers, follow up with your investors, and follow up with your people. An example here is if an employee comes to give you a suggestion or bring a concern, sometimes those hard conversations, if you have to turn around and maybe tell somebody no, that can be hard, that can be challenging. And I have found that a lot of leaders will shy away from that opportunity to have honest and critical conversations. So the follow up and follow through mindset is really going to say, I'm going to face it head on. I'm going to address the feedback I received from my team. I'm going to address the concern that I have to change, or I'm going to address the suggestion that has to be a no. And you're going to follow up and follow through. Thank the person for making the suggestion and tell them why or why not it can't be implemented at this time. And then stay out of the tornado. Here is where, especially launching a business and being maybe the only person in your business, you wear several hats, and it's very easy to get caught up in that tornado. It's caught up with all the distractions that our world presents to us, all of the distractions of being a leader of the business. And as that leader, you have to make sure that you are always looking out and up. If you are going from fire to fire, disaster to disaster, that's taking up your time and energy, where you as the leader have to be looking at what are the strategic priorities that my business needs to focus on? What are the things that I need to make sure that my team is working on that are moving us to the next level? So stay out of the tornado. If you have to help your team because they need help one day or for a week or during a project, jump in, roll up your sleeves, help them out, and then get out. I find that all of these principles can actually apply to all of your shareholders. So they apply to your investors. Someone is giving you money, they're investing in you, own that and make sure that you do a good job. So they apply to your investors. They apply to your customers or clients, end user, as well as your employee. So all of these leadership principles can be applied to those who you consider shareholders in your business. So we talked about the leadership principles. That's your foundation. Who you are as a leader is your foundation. And that's really going to help you develop that people first mindset. What we're going to do right now is talk about those practices. Remember that people first formula. It's people plus practices equals profit. So let's talk about some of the practices that are going to keep your people first. Who you decide to bring into your organization is one of the most critical decisions that you will make. So I have taken the recruiting process, and I want to give you 3 key areas that you can implement to make sure that you're recruiting or really attracting the top talent into your organization. Whether it's an intern or your very first full-time hire, I would really suggest that you practice these 3 elements. The first one is a really good job description. And this is really just identifying the tasks or gaps that your organization needs and who's going to fill it. Of course, interviewing. That interview is everything. Who you select into your open role is critical. And then finally, onboarding. What do you do once you actually make that hire, and how you onboard them is super important. So your job description is really your opportunity to build your employee avatar. This is going to say who you're looking for, what are those qualifications, what they'll be doing, and when, where, and how they'll work. This is where you get to specify those tasks that you identified that perhaps you need to delegate, or it's the gap of knowledge that you know that you're just not the right person to do anymore. And as you scale your business, as your business grows, you have to be able to identify what are the tasks that are keeping me into the distractions versus looking out and up. That might be the start of your job description. There's the tasks that you need to propel your business forward that you're not the right person to do anymore. You can't do it all. You need to delegate. And delegate was one of those qualities that I think many of you selected as a good leader, someone who's able to delegate. So really start to think about those tasks that don't need you to do and someone else can do. You can pay someone else to do that. Then you have the knowledge gaps. And this is where I would say, own the fact, under extreme ownership, own the fact that you're not the best person. If you're trying to expand your business, you might consider a salesperson, someone who is really oriented on attracting new business, and you can delegate that task out. You might be good at a lot of different things. I know you are because you've started a business and you're here, but own the fact that someone might be able to do something better, and that's ultimately what's going to help your business. So your job description is really just getting super clear of who that person is. What are the qualifications? What are they going to be doing? And I've noticed some other things that are just key when you're writing your job description. Those are pay. What's the work environment look like? We're all kind of in this environment where we're working from home. Maybe it's a blend of going into the office, but you really want to decide and let your potential candidate know what that is. Also the reporting structure and if it has any supervisory responsibilities, and then any additional requirements or qualifications that you're looking for. The other thing that I'd like to share is in your job description, you might put in what those competencies are. What's the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you've identified that are going to make this, that are going to attract the right person into the role. When you're building your job description, and I'm going to give you a moment, some time in a moment to actually brainstorm some ideas for your job description, you need to get crystal clear on what is a required competency versus a nice to have competency. Because as you start to make your selections, you need to stay consistent. So you can't tell one candidate that you need to have 3 years experience in a certain field, but then settle on a candidate that only has 1 experience. So a job description is really just a people practice that's going to help keep you very organized in how you make your selection for your candidate. So these are the, all of the elements, if you will, that we'll put into a job description. I want you to brainstorm. We'll put 30 seconds on the clock. And I'd love for you to brainstorm tasks that you feel that you need to delegate, or the knowledge gap that you find that your organization is reaching, and just start to brainstorm what your job description might be. What are the tasks, what are the responsibilities that you might be able to hire? I'll invite you to do that now. So as you started to brainstorm those tasks that you are, that you know that you're going to need to delegate, or that you know that you're going to reach a portion of that knowledge gap, and that might be in the future. And so what I would say to any business owner is start just a brainstorm of things. Start your job description in your OneNote, in your notes section. And when you reach a task, just start brainstorming that. Because again, if you're looking out and up, if you're staying out of that tornado, you're forward thinking. So you know you have those goals for your organization. When you reach 10 clients, you want to propel in a marketing strategy, and you're going to bring on a marketing intern to do so. This is just building a business strategy. And when you start to brainstorm those tasks, it just keeps you organized. And that's a people practice that's going to help you remain focused on the tasks at hand that require your attention. So if your job description is a basic people practice, I'm going to give you the people practice 2.0 version of a job description, and those are known as the essential functions of the job. The essential functions of the job are the major tasks that any person in the position must do. Think of this as your baseline of a skill set. It's incorporated into your job description and will actually assist you in identifying the right candidate, because you'll come back to your job description when you're making your selection questions or when you are trying to decide what questions to ask a candidate. In addition to the job description and this essential functions of the job, these baseline skill sets that you need, once you have applicants or once you have colleagues, the essential functions of your job are also going to help you from a legal matter. In an interactive process, if a candidate or employee is eligible for an accommodation because of a disability, you often go through what is referred to as an interactive process. And it's just a two-way conversation that you and your candidate or your employee walk through to decide what is going to help them be their best and do their best work with their disability that may be covered under federal, state, or local municipal codes. And so your essential functions of the job, those baselines, are just a reference point for you to say, you know, this is what we need to do. These are some options for a reasonable accommodation. So again, just a 2.0 approach of more of a legal aspect of why a job description is very important. Ultimately, when it comes to in the interactive process or building those essential functions of the job, you go back to just good judgment, sound leadership. What's going to work the best for my organization and for the employee. Okay, so the interview. So now you've identified those tasks and gaps. You have your job description. You've decided that you are going to bring someone into your organization. What do you do now? The interview is where you're going to select your candidate. And if you really put some forethought into how you're going to go through the selection process, I promise you, you're going to attract the right candidates. So the employees that you bring in are really just an extension of you. They're an extension of your brand. And so you want to make sure in your interview process that you're first making sure that you're attracting the right candidates to your organization. So there's some practices that I want to share with you that will guide you in that process. And the first one is just determine what the process is. Who's going to do the interview? Are you going to do all of the interviews? If you have co-founders, will each of you do a different interview, or will you do a panel interview? The why you need to think about that up front is because you really want to make sure that every candidate has a similar experience. Every candidate should go through a very similar interview process that's going to make sure that you are making the most objective decisions. And so just determining what that process is very important. In this stage two, you'll decide what type of screening process you'll do. Will you do a drug test, a criminal records check, etc.? And we'll talk more about that in a moment. You'll also develop your selection questions. This is where you'll go back to that job description and you'll craft those questions that are going to help you identify who has those knowledge, skills, and abilities, who is able to perform those essential functions of the job. That's what you'll do in crafting your questions. And then finally, casting the net wide. And here is where you have to make sure that you are recruiting outside of your immediate circle. If you're just passing your job description around to the people that you know, guess what? You're going to get people like you. And successful organizations are always going to bring in or strive to bring in diversity of thought, experience, and quite honestly, potential. That's what's really going to drive your business forward. So as you begin the interview process, determine what the process is going to look like for your candidates. Everybody gets the same process. Know what your interview questions are going to be and cast the net wide. So your employment screening. This is where we're gonna talk a little bit of the law. I'm gonna tie it back to law. Good. Whenever you're dealing with employment law, good judgment, sound leadership, right? Your basic leadership principles of your HR function. So you need to be crystal clear on what your screening process is going to look like before you start. And in many cases, you need to tell the candidate upfront what type of screening process you're going to do. And then with the screening process, you just have to assess, why is it necessary? Is a drug test necessary for the position or the industry that your business is in? It may or may not, but you decide. So what I've identified is kind of the most common things I have seen in different industries is a drug test in California. It's generally permissible so long as you tell the candidate up front. A criminal records check, generally it's permissible if it's job related or industry related. And you, under the Fair Employment Housing Act, or FEHA, you cannot ask or you cannot do a criminal records check until you have presented your candidate with a conditional offer. So these are just things that you need to have a working knowledge of as a leader of the business so that you stay out of trouble, number one, but you give a good experience to your candidate. You want to start off on the right foot. And so you don't submit their information to do that criminal records until you have a conditional offer. I will also share that under FEHA, there are certain things that if they do come back on a criminal records check, you cannot take into consideration in your selection process. I picked out 3 things that I thought I've seen the most of that you have to essentially can't take into consideration. And that's an arrest that didn't result in a conviction, if it occurred while in juvenile court, and non-felony convictions of marijuana possession if over 2 years. Also, under Ban the Box in California, you cannot ask a candidate on an application or in an interview about their criminal history. And when you think about it, all of this stuff makes sense. In order to make the most objective decision for your business, some of their criminal history, it doesn't make a difference in how they can do the job right now. Again, some industries, they do have to have a criminal records check, and you'll address that in industry specific ways. The last thing I wanted to talk about is salary history. So now what I'd like to do is I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been in an interview where you were asked how much money you make or how much money you want to make in this new job? Mm-hmm. Like, give me a thumbs up, say yes. I'm just super interested.
There are a couple thumbs up.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, asking a candidate how much money they want to make or how much money they're making, it kind of seems innocent, right? I want to make sure that we're talking apples to apples here. If you're looking for $100 an hour and I'm only going to pay you 20, that's a big disconnect. We're kind of far off base here. But in California, you cannot ask about salary history. It cannot determine who you make an offer to, or it cannot be the premise of your salary offer. So my professional recommendation is don't ask the question. As a leader of the business, once you've decided to post a position and to make your selection, you know how much you can pay. The rate is the rate, and just tell them what the rate is. The rate is, $30 an hour. It's a non-exempt role. It includes overtime, and you'll work 40 hours a week. I estimate you'll work 40 hours a week. There's not necessarily a need anymore to ask what the expectation is. And the reason why this law was put into place was because sometimes there can be a pay discrepancy, and this is to avoid those pay discrepancies. And this is how a pay discrepancy might go. Might say, I ask you, what's your pay expectation? And you say, I'd like to make $20 an hour. I go, oh, great, she'll take this, or he'll take this for $20 an hour. But if you had said I need $30 an hour, I'd pay you $30 an hour. So that's really where you get into pay discrepancy. It's not a good people practice. When you write your job description, know what your budget is, that's your budget, and that's what you're going to pay. No need to ask about it, and it's prohibited in California. So these are my employment screenings, FYI. And now let's look at, before we get into where you'll craft some of your own interview questions, it's definitely a critical note to let you know that in the state of California, the protected class genre far exceeds what's currently protected under federal statute. So again, I go back to the people first practices. Good judgment and sound leadership, when you look at these, they should be very obvious. You never want to make discriminatory decisions in your interview or screening process. And certainly once you have employees inside your organization, you never want to make development or retention decisions, even adverse employee decisions, such as, you know, who you discipline, who you fire or lay off, they never, ever should be based upon protected classes. That's just bad business. It doesn't put your people first, and it's against the law. So you want to keep these in mind, and as we get into how you build out your selection questions. So we know that hiring decisions are critical, and we discussed some of the laws surrounding good recruiting strategies, right? We understand what a good job description does. We understand the importance of knowing when and why we're doing certain screening processes. Let's talk about what those questions are. Your job description is your employee avatar. And in your recruiting, who you're casting that net out to recruit, that is really how you're going to attract good candidates. And you want to really make sure your brand is represented. And in the selection process is really how you're going to hone in and really make sure that you are bringing in the top talent into your organization. So I picked just a few of my go-to interview questions. And I would love for you to start crafting your own interview questions. So I love behavioral questions, like tell me about a time when you've done this. And by the way, I always ask for 2 or 3 examples, especially if I am hiring for a critical role and there's going to be a lot of critical thinking or challenge development or conflict resolution rather. I want them to give me multiple examples of how they've overcome an operational challenge. So I'll ask for several different examples. I might give them a scenario to give me how they'll respond. So tell me about a time I love. How would you describe your leadership style? How would you describe your past accomplishments? And then also, how do you describe your leadership style? How do you resolve conflict? Those types of things. So I'd love to give you an example, or I'd love to give you time to identify your own or craft your own question. So you've already started your brain dump of your job description. Now just jot down 1 or 2 questions that you might do in the interview process.
There is a question in the chat asking if you can legally ask them what their salary expectations are without asking their salary history. Like if a job is posted, can they list a salary range, then determine where on the spectrum that candidate would fall?
So one, let me say, if they are currently in your organization, you can absolutely use salary to determine what their next salary is. That's without a question, right? Because you obviously want to make sure, you take what they're currently making and apply a 5 to 8% salary increase for a promotion. If they're externally, generally speaking, I think now posting salary ranges, like saying the salary range is this, an affirmative posting of the salary range is, 50,000 to 60,000, depending on experience, is definitely preferred. I think most employers, especially in California, are removing that expectation box from their job application sites, their tracking systems. So you really just get into, again, are you going to disqualify me because I overshoot it? I might be qualified, but I overshot it by $5 if it's an hourly range. Are you going to determine that that's out of range? So you just want to just go through it thoughtfully. There's also a thought, and I understand, as a job seeker, you don't want people to apply if you're completely off base. That's why I would really encourage you to post. If you're posting a role, then you would just say this is the salary range and it's depending on experience. And yes, absolutely, you depend. If the salary range is 60,000 to 80,000, you determine where they come in. A candidate actually can ask what the pay range is, so you do have to give them what that pay range is. based on experience. As long as it's a subjective marker of where you're slotting them into that range, it's permissible. James, I hope I answered your question, but feel free to unmute yourself and if I didn't, or to ask additional follow-up questions. Okay, so I hope that you had an opportunity to jot down 1 or 2 questions that go with your brainstorm of your job description. I do see a question: as part of the interview, is it common or legal to give a task to assess their capability? That is a really good question, and it's actually super common in hospitality, especially in culinary, to have them do what's called a stage. So if you're hiring for a culinary, a chef or chef de cuisine, they might come in and prepare a menu item or develop a menu. This is tricky because it really needs to align back to what the job is. You also need to assess if everyone's doing it and really what the screening process is going to do. Are you going to have them take a typing test? Are you accommodating for any disabilities the person might have at the onset? Are they not a good test taker? Do they not have the technology at home? So I would really, before you do the the question was, as part of the interview, is it common to give a task? I would say it may be common in certain industries, but I would really be crystal clear on to make sure it's absolutely necessary. Now, that's different than a qualification, right? So if I'm hiring for an attorney, I might make sure that they've passed the bar and they're actually legally can practice law. That's completely different, but asking them to perform a task is different. What might be a better solution is maybe asking them to present a portfolio, and maybe that's something that you would do with like a social media manager or director of sales or something of that sort. Okay, so we've crafted our interview questions. So now that you've created your job description, you've gone through your interview process, you've made your selection, now you have your first hire. Congratulations. Now what do you do with them? You have to set them up for success. This is really where you give your humans, your people, the resources that they need to really set them off on the right foot. Has anyone ever started a job where you showed up and no one knew who you were? Has everyone had that experience? I hope not, but I think it's really common. Have you ever showed up and you didn't know where to go? You didn't know who you were reporting to? All of these things really, they don't represent your brand well, right? Again, if you have a strong people-focused mindset, you're focused on your good leadership and foundational leadership principles of your HR function, you will make sure that your new hires are taken care of. They know exactly where to go on their first day. They get to meet the team. So that's why really having an onboarding experience is going to set the stage for their employment. It sets the stage of who you are as an employer. It gives an expectation on the brand, really the behaviors of what the organization is about. So an onboarding starts from day one, the introduction. How do you orientate your new hires to who your brand is, who your company is, who your customers are, who are the other employees that they're going to be working with, who do they report to? All of those things really happen in the introduction, and you can make it fun. Even in our Zoom exhausted world, you could make this introduction fun. I am a big fan of, on day one, sharing the mission, values, and purpose of an organization. So a mission is really about what you are doing. It's accomplish-based. If you are a mission-focused organization, or if you have a mission statement in your organization, it's a statement that says, this is what we are going to accomplish. If you're a purpose-focused organization, or if your organization holds a purpose statement, the purpose statement is really why your organization exists. What are you trying to achieve in the world? It's the why. Regardless if you're mission-focused, purpose-focused, or both, every organization, every single organization should have values. The values are simply the behaviors that's expected by everyone in the organization, from the founder to the intern and everyone in between. The values drive your organization. And what we're going to talk about next are going to anchor you and how you develop your employees as well. So on day one, you really want your employees to know who you are, who you serve, and what you stand for. And this can be done in setting the expectations. So I want to give you, or I want to invite you right now, I'd love to see in the chat, what are the values of your organization? So if your organization currently has identified what those values are, I'd love to see them. And if you don't, I'd invite you to brainstorm, what are the behaviors that are important to you? So let's see what comes through in the chat. Okay, while people are typing, I'm going to talk about setting the expectations. So when you're setting the expectations, I am a fan of a training plan. You've hired someone into the organization. You have to own, we talked about extreme ownership. As the leader of the business, you have to own their development. You have to own how they're being orientated into your company. How is that person, your new hire, learning what is expected of them, what their development and tools are? And also,
everyone will start watching Dancing with the Stars again.
Adriana, can you maybe make sure everyone is on mute?
I was just going to say, if all of you can please mute yourselves, and I'll go through too and see if there's anybody that I can manually, there, I think we've got it fixed.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So let's go back to the values, because I'm starting to see them come through. So I see customer friendly, empathetic with customers, patience during stressful situations, self-starter, clear, honest, and efficient communication, trend book. Oh, I like that. Diversity, empowerment, education, that's affordable, honesty, reliability. Good. These are great. So I would really encourage you, as you're building your organization, as you're scaling your business, drawing and anchoring yourself to those behaviors of what everyone is expected to do, not only is going to make sure you attract and retain the right people, because by the way, you can also develop your interview questions based on those values, but also if you have founders and co-founders, how do you anchor one another to how or what direction your business is going to? Is it serving the mission? Is it part of your purpose? Are you doing it in a way that is authentic to your business? It's all built into the values. So when you're sharing the values with everyone and you're training and you're going through your training plan, especially for new hires, I really want you to think about what are the first couple of tasks that they're going to do. What's expected them to accomplish in their first week, first month, first 90 days? How are you giving them the resources, and what's the follow-up and follow-through, another leadership principle that you are going to do to make sure that they are successful. Your new hire will appreciate that. There's a certain level of respect, I think, that comes from that as well, that they've walked into a professional organization, that the people are living their values. So I saw honesty, someone identified as being a value. So do they get that feeling? Has the whole interview process been an honest? Have they always been kept up and told, Angela, we think you're great, you're going to move on to the second phase of our interview? And then did that happen? So there's an experience that your candidates actually enter your organization with, and you really want to make sure that that interview experience and that onboarding experience is attached to or correlates with your values. So you set all the expectations, you've given them the training plan, you know how often you're going to follow up with them. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the employee handbook. Your employee handbook does not have to be this antiquated, on the shelf, printed piece of paper that just is legalese. Make it fun. In fact, I love how someone put a trend book. Make it about you. Have pictures of your employees. Make it interactive. Update it often, and always draw back to what's inside the employee handbook. What does it hold? It should have your expectations in there. It should have your values in there. There are some other things in California that we also want to make sure it is, but it's also, again, a reflection of you. If you are a purpose or people first organization and you have solid people practices, you're going to have a statement in there about what you will not, what you absolutely will not tolerate, and that might be harassment, discrimination, retaliation. All of those things are great expectations, and you'll note that in your handbook. So I know many of you are very, very creative, and so a good creative handbook can be really fun, and it really just sets the stage for a well-organized, people-first HR function. I did want to share that in looking and kind of developing this for the rec center, I was looking at some retention statistics. And I found one study that said that a thorough and fun onboarding experience creates better retention by 82%. So 82% of the study or the participants in the study were more likely to stay with their employer past 6 months if they had a fun and thorough onboarding experience. So just something to keep in mind, onboarding does matter. So the average cost to lose an employee. So we've talked about onboarding. I kind of shared the statistic I learned about the retention. The average cost to lose an employee to turnover is typically about 33% of their total compensation. So again, as an owner of the business, as a person who wants to create value back to their shareholders or to their investors, you don't want to be giving away money. You don't want to make a bad investment on someone, bring them into your organization, spend time training them to have them leave in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So you really want to make sure that your selection is good and that your onboarding is great. 1 in 5 new hires are not likely to recommend their employer. And back to that job description, you created your employee avatar, who you want to propel your business forward. Your employees are going to do that for you. And your employees have got to be great brand ambassadors. So you want to make sure that they're experiencing your organization is really creating that loyalty in terms of employee retention. So speaking of employee retention, I want to share some ways that you can retain your top talent. So we've gone through the job description, we've made our selection process, we've onboarding our employees. So now we have our team together. Now what do you do with it? A people-minded HR function has good practices, and that includes retention. We're really focused here on making brand ambassadors. And so even if they do leave your organization, even if they move, they outgrow the organization, whatever the case may be, you want them to be loyal customers. You still want them to be promoters of you and your business. So these are some 4 simple ways you can create great retention. Communication. As the owner of the business, you set the strategy. It's your job to communicate and re-communicate what that strategy is, what it is, how you're going to get there, what the expectations are, how you're going to get there. And you have to re-communicate it. I always say, if I just had to give instruction once, my job would be really easy. And I'm a mom too. So if I only had to tell my kids one time to do their chores, I'd be mom of the year. But the reality of it is, people, not just your children, but your employees, they need to be reminded of their goals. They need to be reminded of the work that they're doing. People want to feel connected to the major purpose. They want to feel connected to something bigger. And so just reminding them of the work that they're doing matters. And here's why, here's where we're going, here's what we've achieved. It all matters. A challenge right now in our COVID world is the Zoom. And we were kind of talking about Zoom exhaustion. How are you in keeping them engaged during your Zoom meetings? Could you ask one of your employees to lead the team meeting? It would provide some leadership opportunities for them to grow, kind of changes up the cadence a little bit, but ultimately you're the leader and you are responsible for that communication cadence. Development. Here is where I am a big proponent of developing from within. How do you take the people that you have in your organization that you've invested in, and they quite honestly have invested in you? How do you get them ready for the next role? And when we talk about the leadership principle of staying out of the tornado, looking out and up, Where are you taking your business? What are those future gaps that you're going to need to fill in tasks or knowledge? And how do you take full ownership of making sure your people are going to be able to fill those gaps? The tech world changes so quickly. How are you making sure that you and your employees are keeping up with that world, with all of the innovation that's going on? And a great way to do that is to really set up a people-minded focus on your development. Recognition. Find ways to praise. I've worked with several managers who have a hard time of thanking a person for doing what they're supposed to do. I say that's basic psychology. You praise the behavior you want more of, and it goes back to your values. If people see that praise is given for the values that you say are important, people are going to do it. So find ways to praise. A simple thank you goes a long way. Thanking people for showing up, for giving them your best or giving you your best. It happens. It promotes teamwork. It promotes loyalty in your brand and employee retention. I also want to remind you that employee retention, we're in this world of immediate gratification, and we have OpenTable and Yelp and social media platforms to share about different experiences. And employers have that as well. We can be evaluated on Glassdoor. So you want to make sure that the people that you bring in are setting you up for a great reputation of being the employer of choice. And lastly, we want to talk about accountability. As you are making your people practices, you want to make sure that you have accountability. So gone are the days right now of the one time a year employee feedback, the employee performance review. I entered the workforce when that was a thing. Once a year, you got to find out how you were doing. You got to sit down with your boss and find out how you were doing. It sounds absolutely absurd right now that we would do that, because what do people want right now? They want to know that they're doing good work early and often. They want consistent, real-time feedback. And I'll bring that back to recognition. Praise often. If you have to course correct, if you have to hold people accountable because they're not performing in a way that match or correlate with your values, you have to course correct early and often. Generally, people want to do good work for you, and they want to know when they're not. And so again, you have to take on that ownership of accountability. So in your retention, if you practice good communication, if you have a development strategy for how to retain your people, give recognition, find ways to praise, and keep people accountable for doing the good work that you know that they can do, that is going to help keeping your employees happy. So we talked about today the leadership principles, and the type of leader that you decide to be in your organization is really going to set that people first mindset. That's the first part of that equation. You want that people first mindset. We discussed the three practices in your recruiting strategy, the job description, interviewing, and onboarding, along with some of those simple retention strategies that we just covered that will set your organization up to be a very strong, people-focused organization. And so when you combine all of these things, that really makes up the strong HR function that I know that you're looking for. And when your people are happy, your business reaps the reward. And so that, my friends, is HR basics.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. And that was a wonderful presentation. We have just a little bit of time left for questions, if anybody has any questions.
I do see one. Can one start the company handbook long before the company has more members than just the founder, or is it best created when people, I've lost it. It was best created when preparing for expansion. Start it now. It should be a living, breathing document. Start it now. You can start identifying your values. You can start identifying what you expect, and it will adapt. It will grow with you as your organization grows. Great question.
Great. Adriana, were there any other questions in the chat that we missed? Or so, oh, go ahead.
Can we ask if the applicant intends to remain in the company for a long time, or if they would leave if some other company offers a higher salary?
You know what, if you don't have, generally speaking, contracts are sticky ground in California. I understand, especially if you're in certain industries, those are required. That's an employee contract, and in the United States, we practice employment at will. So generally, I don't think that that's not the best question to answer or to ask them. I'd stay clear of that.
So thank you so much. Unfortunately, it looks like we're just about out of time.
Okay.
I know a lot of people have to head to the next class, but thank you so much, Angela. And I know Adriana had, did you share that link in the chat with everyone for the survey?
Yes, I did. Let me share it again.
Okay, so if you see a chat, link in that chat, everybody, that's really helpful for us if you wouldn't mind filling that out. And in answer to the question about the recording, yes, the recordings are always shared in our YouTube channel. And I believe Adriana also shared the YouTube channel. And so you,
Yes, I did.
Yep, so within 24 hours, it's available for you there. And so thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Angela. I'd like to take a photo for those of you who are still left. If you wouldn't mind turning on your cameras, we can take a really quick photo, and we can just we'll put on the gallery view and everybody can show that we were here. I know a lot of people have run off to their class, but let me go ahead and stop the recording there.